Argentina's new president Javier Milei has delivered on his promises, a drastic set of measures that will cut spending and is most likely to cause suffering to the poor and working class has been introduced. Now the new president and his ministers say that it is painful but necessary, but the real issue is a particular far right-wing approach to economic aspects, which has failed time and again. We go to Zoe Alexander to understand what these measures are and what impact they'll have on the people. Zoe, thank you so much for joining us. So what's been happening since Milei took over, a raft of proposals being announced?
Well, finally, the perhaps unexpected for many did take place this Sunday. On December 10th, Javier Milei from the Liberty Advances Party was sworn in as president of Argentina, a move many thought they would not see occur. But as we know, he did win by a 10-point difference in the second round of the presidential elections back in November. So he had made a lot of what some might call crazy promises when he was campaigning for president. Javier Milei is, again, a far-right libertarian. Some of his key promises in the area, for example, of the economy, which was one of the areas that he was most emphatic about, was saying that he would dollarize the economy, close the central bank, and enact harsh austerity measures. So in this first 3 days, in this first couple of days of Javier Milei's presidency, we saw the economy minister, Luis Caputo, one of the few remaining ministers under Javier Milei, make a televised address and announce a series of measures to deal with the economic crisis facing Argentina. And there are about 10 of these, and all of them essentially involve cutting public spending and an approach of kind of making it worse before anything will get better. So amongst the measures that were announced by Caputo are that, for example, work contracts of state employees that have been working for less than a year are not renewed. All public works of the government, so bridges, public infrastructure projects, are not renewed and they're suspended. The number of ministries is reduced from 18 to 9, and the government secretaries from 106 to 54. The amount of money transferred from the central government to the regions, the provinces, is reduced. There is a reduction of subsidies for energy and transportation. And importantly, the exchange rate of the peso to the dollar is fixed at 800 pesos to the dollar. So there are a couple other of economic measures that were announced, but I think what's important to highlight is that in Javier Milei's campaign, the main message was that we're going after the political caste, we're going after the corrupt, we're going after the rich, we're going to, really hit them where it hurts. We're going to make Argentina for the people, the hard workers. And what's interesting about all of these measures is that it actually does kind of the opposite of that. These are all measures that will directly impact working people, people who are not long-term involved in the government, who are not from this kind of made-up idea of this political caste, as Javier Milei calls it. These are the people who are already most vulnerable. It's going to impact state employees, some of the only people, working class people, who have stable jobs and salaries. And of course, the reduction of subsidies for energy and transportation is brutal, because this is the daily needs of everyone in Argentina. This means that transportation, taking the bus, taking the subway, can be affordable. The price in Argentina is extremely, extremely, extremely affordable and economic because the state subsidizes this transportation. Taking this away, again, it's trying to cut state spending, trying to reduce the foreign external debt, et cetera, pay off this debt, have less state spending. But this is absolutely going to hurt working people, and it in no way actually comes close to touching those who are established economic power, those who establish political power.
And could you also elaborate a bit more on how these proposals will affect the common people and what has been the kind of response from working class sections, from those who are going to be affected?
Well, I sort of mentioned it before, the impact on working people of these measures. Um, it has been received with a lot of trepidation. I think a lot of people were waiting to see exactly what Milei would really move forward with. Again, as I mentioned before, and we've talked about on other episodes, he is such a radical and anti-people proposal. He promised during his campaign harsh austerity. He promised many, many things, and I think that what we're seeing is that he is going to follow through on this harsh austerity. Some people call him a Macri 2.0, but obviously with a completely different presentation. But it's interesting to note that Macri is deeply involved in his government, had helped convince major sectors of the right, or and some people would consider center right, to actually get behind Milei. He's been helping a lot of the ministers or those who are close to Mauricio Macri. And so I think that in that perspective, we can see this as a continuation of this very, very intense neoliberal policies, which again saw devastation for the Argentine working people, pushed into poverty. The poverty rate today in Argentina is 40% of the population living below the poverty line. This jump from what it was before occurred under Mauricio Macri. It maintained throughout the government of Alberto Fernandez, and I think that it's likely that we'll see this increase during Javier Milei's presidency. Many of the few middle class, working class people who had not fallen below the poverty line are likely to now, because, for example, those who work with different state programs, state governments, and different sort of public projects are all going to be impacted by these cuts. When he says cutting ministries, cutting secretaries, that means the salaries and the jobs of all of those thousands of people who and hundreds of people who are employed there. When there's less money from the federal government going to the provinces, that means provinces will also have to reduce their spending, which again is largely hiring people for these social programs that many of them have. This is really going to push people further towards the edge, further into economic precarity. And we've seen that all of the major trade unions in Argentina have already announced their opposition to these measures. I think we're going to see, just as we're seeing maybe what will be a Macri 2.0 in terms of the neoliberal policies, I think we're also going to see that in terms of resistance. The years under Mauricio Macri saw a tremendous level of mobilization by the trade unions, by mass organizations, by workers of the popular economy. And I think that is definitely going to reactivate during these times. Organizations have pledged that they're not going to be afraid, they're not going to be scared by such a by policies which hit them directly, by this discourse of hatred. We know that Javier Milei also has called communists left-wing people who fight for social justice, saying all sorts of things, that they're terrorists, that they're criminals, that they're all this, that, the other thing. There have been, not only these economic policies, but really direct threats to them. However, organizations said they will not be intimidated, and they will continue fighting, and especially at this time where it's most important to keep organizing and fighting for the most vulnerable, the most economically precarious, the workers of this popular economy, and so many different other sectors in Argentine society, which will be directly impacted, again, by what could be hyperinflation, already this established currency devaluation, and so many other measures which really hit the pockets of the Argentine people.